As you can see, my workspace is pretty small. So for today's project, I'm going to create a lift for my monitor. This will allow me to put my keyboard, my calculator, and my mouse away, so when I'm designing I have a little more space and I'm not constantly shuffling these around. Let's begin by forming a brief design. To do this, we're going to have to take a few measurements. I want my monitor to sit firmly, so I'm probably going to make it about 7 inches deep. And then I want to be able to include the keyboard and the calculator, so I'm probably going to make it about 21 inches, which will line up with my monitor very nice. And the total height of my keyboard is 3/4 of an inch. Probably would like a close-up of what's going on here, huh? Although your measurements may vary depending on what type or size keyboard you have, the principles to build a lift remain the same. I'm building this particular lift for my Mac keyboard and calculator, so I've decided to make it 21 inches long to match the length of the monitor and 7 inches deep to provide adequate support for the base of the monitor. I'm going to make the lift 2 inches high. Since my keyboard is 11 inches long, I'm going to cut the keyboard hole to 11 1/4 inches wide. This will allow it to slide in and out easily. My calculator is 3 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to make the calculator hole slightly larger as well. Let's say 4 1/8 of an inch. My keyboard is only 3/4 of an inch high, so I'll plan to make the cutouts 1 inch high. Since I plan to use half-inch boards, the math will be easy. We want the lift to be 7 inches deep, so we will need to cut 14 half-inch boards that are 21 inches long and 2 inches high. We want our keyboard to slide under the lift, but not so deep we can't retrieve it. Since our keyboard is 5 inches deep, or 10 half-inch boards, we will make the keyboard slot 9 boards deep. This will allow the keyboard to stick out 1/2 inch so we can retrieve it easily. Our calculator is 6 inches or 12 boards deep. Since we also want to make it easy to retrieve, we will make the cutout for the calculator 11 boards deep. This will allow the calculator to stick out 1/2 inch as well. For the next step, you're going to want to pick out your wood. For this project, I really wanted a contrast in colors, so I picked out 2 very different boards. The first, I picked out a red oak. It's a hard board, and it'll make a nice faceplate. And then I picked out a poplar, a little softer, a lot lighter. When you put these 2 boards together, there will be a distinctive difference between the color and the texture. I think this is really going to make our project pop. However, it is a little pricey to do it this way. If you'd like, you could use pine. You cut down your pine into the 14 boards, and then you stain 7 of them just on the outside edges. Once you've stained them and you glue them together, you'll have the same contrast for less money. Okay, now that you've picked out your boards, you're going to set up your table saw to cut these 2 inches wide. Don't forget your safety gear. Now that all our boards are 2 inches wide, we're going to move on to our chop saw and cut them 21 inches long. cut 14 boards in all. Now that we started cutting ours, I'm going to take a minute to stack them and show you the contrast in color. This is going to be a really sharp project when we're done. Now that we've cut our boards, I'm going to line them up. Any board that was marred by the saw, such as this one, I'm just going to flip over. I'm going to keep the top really smooth. This will just save sanding in the future. If we make any mistakes, we can sand it down, but I will flip the boards so that the best of each board is on the top. Just like that. Now, I like my boards to be uniformed, so I'm starting with a red oak and I'm ending with a poplar. This is 14. I'm going to add one more board, 15, even though that's not the original call on our plans. That's okay. I like the way it looks better. Now that we picked out the best side of our boards, I'm going to begin gluing these boards together. But I'm not going to glue them all at once. As you may recall from our plan, we determined that our keyboard was 9 boards deep. So I'm going to count out 9 boards, and I'm going to glue these boards together, keeping in mind that this is the front and I'm staying in order. We also determined that our calculator was 11 boards deep. So 9 plus 2 is 11. I'm going to glue these 2 boards individually together. And then whatever boards remain, if you're going with the original plan, you'll have 3. I added this board, so I have 4. I'm going to glue these boards together. I'm going to be sure to keep them in this order when I glue them. Again, I'm going to glue 9 boards, 2 boards, and 4 boards. This will all make sense in a little bit. Wood glue is cheap. Use lots of it. I'm using gloves so I can spread it out evenly and quickly. You'll keep doing this until you have your 3 sets of boards glued together, and then we'll clamp them. Again, don't be afraid to use a lot of wood glue. You're going to want to glue this on a flat surface. And you'll want to do this as quickly as possible so your wood glue doesn't set up before you have a chance to really make sure your boards are even. Now that you've set your clamps, wipe off any extra glue that has come to the surface. This will just save on sanding later. Once you've done this, set this section aside and glue together your next 2 sections in the same manner. Now that we've let our blocks dry for 24 hours, we'll simply start unclamping them all. We'll take our 9-piece section to the table saw. For the next step, we're going to set up our table saw to make a few cuts. We'll have to refer back to our plans for the exact measurements. So we'll look at them. As you recall, we want to hollow out this space for our keyboard and this space for our calculator. So we're going to make 4 cuts initially, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This will give us a guide to know how much material in between we have to take out. We've already determined that our maximum height is going to be 1 inch. So I'll set up my blade to be 1 inch high for all 4 of these cuts. I always begin by using a T-square and making sure that my blade is properly aligned. And then I'll raise it to 1 inch. Or lowered in this case. precisely where I want it. I'll take a piece of scrap wood and make a test cut. And that's just about perfect. We've determined the first cut is going to be 2 inches from the end. Now when I cut this, I'll have my first cut at 2 inches. So 2 inches from the end is your first cut. Your second cut is going to be 13 1/4 inches from the end. We'll adjust our blade now and make that cut. Now that we've determined where our keyboard is going to be, we need to make our calculator cuts. However, as you recall, our calculator needs to be deeper. So we're going to clamp the B section, or the second section, onto this section before we make our calculator cuts. I want to take a minute to point out something that you may notice. My board count here is different than in the first half of the video. This is simply because I had some problems recording the last half of the video, so I had to start over. I was unable to find 1/2 inch boards, so I had to convert to 3/4 inch boards. The principles, however, remain the same. The difference you'll notice is the size of the boards. These are all 3/4 inch boards instead of 1/2 inch boards. What that means is originally, while using 1/2 inch boards, my keyboard was 9 boards deep. Now it's only 6. My calculator was 11 boards deep. Now it's only 7. And the total project was 14 boards deep. Now it's only 11. This isn't going to make much difference. I just wanted to point it out if you notice a difference in the board count. If you use 1/2 inch boards, your keyboard section is 9 boards deep, and then your calculator section was 2 additional boards, or 11 boards deep. So you want to clamp your keyboard and your calculator section together before you make the cuts for your calculator. So I don't have wobble. I've actually reversed. These are my keyboard cuts. I clamped things together, and now I'm going to reverse and cut from the back 2 inches. That'll be my first calculator cut. Now that we've made our 2 keyboard cuts and our 1 calculator cut, we need to move the blade over 6 1/8 inch to account for our calculator width. keyboard just to double check and make sure I'm going to have enough room. I do on there, and I do on there. So these cuts are perfect. Now that we've made our initial cuts, we need to remove this material in between to make room for the keyboard and the calculator. We'll do that by removing all of this and then unclamping and removing the rest of this. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can use a router, you can just keep making cut after cut with your table saw, or in this case, I'm going to use a dido blade, so it's going to be a wider blade so I can take more material at once. I'm going to set up the dido blade now. Now that I've installed my dido blade and set it at 1 inch high, I'm going to clamp my keyboard and my calculator section together. I'll begin by cutting out the calculator section. Then I'll unclamp it and cut out the remaining keyboard section. Now that I've unclamped it, I'm going to do the same thing to the keyboard section. I'm still going to use these clamps though. I like the idea of keeping my hands as far away from the board as possible. So now we have the calculator and the keyboard section completely cleared out. Now that you finish this, you have 3 sections. The first section has a place for your keyboard and your calculator. Since your calculator was a little deeper than your keyboard, the next section just has a place for your calculator. You're going to glue those 2 sections together. That'll create a backstop for your keyboard, but not a backstop for your calculator. Then you're going to glue that to the remaining section that has had nothing done to it and clamp them all together. And then you'll have a keyboard stop for your keyboard and then another one for your calculator. I don't know if I can show you any better, but that's sort of what it looks like. Now it's time to glue your 3 sections together. Be sure that your colors line up as you want them to. It's been 24 hours since we glued our 3 boards together. Now we're simply going to remove the clamps and lightly sand off any excess glue that was left behind. Okay, now that I'm done sanding the project, I'm simply going to dust it off, and I'm going to seal it with butcher block conditioner. However, you could use polyurethane or any other stain of your choice. Let it sit for another 24 hours, and then it'll be ready to use. It's amazing the difference. Look how rich that wood looks. Let your project dry for 24 hours. Alright, here it is. We'll just get it installed. And this is what it looks like complete. As you can see, my keyboard slides underneath, my my calculator slides underneath, my mouse goes on top, and now I have room to design my next project. And if you've enjoyed this video, please consider purchasing one of my limited edition t-shirts. They're available in the United States for $15, plus $5 shipping and handling. You can get more information by contacting me directly at creatingmandruff@icloud.com. Thank you.